Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns versus Houston Texans Week 6 matchup based on analytics. Each week, I collect all of the current 2017 NFL team data in order to analyze and project potential NFL performance. And since it's a weekly collection, it'll always be pretty fluid each week in terms of ups and downs. However, there will always be little nuggets of data that become bigger nuggets of data as the season continues. So stick around as I analyze each week's matchups based on analytics. And if you're new to the channel, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So with this particular matchup between the Browns and the Houston Texans, most of the data in this game favors the Texans. Sorry, Browns fans, but it just favors the Texans, and I'll get into some reasons why. So overall, there are some things in the Browns' favor. First of all, just to get this out of the way, DeShone Kizer is no longer the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. It's going to be Kevin Hogan. I've already tweeted about this. If you look up at Geometrics Kevin Hogan, I've already tweeted about my thoughts on Kevin Hogan. I think he's definitely a guy that can Brian Hoyer it up, is the best way I could explain it. But I don't think he's a long-term viability. I don't think he's a guy that you keep long-term because of inconsistencies here and there. So ultimately, is he better than Kizer? It remains to be seen. But he definitely was able to move the football a lot better than Kizer, which is kind of why they made the decision. But again, we'll see what happens. But I do agree that this will affect some of these data points, because whenever you have a new quarterback, a new signal caller, it can just mess everything up. It just changes the dynamics of everything. So ultimately, a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about is stuff that will probably change after this week. But some of the other stuff like rushing offense and those other sort of things, I think will kind of stay the same. But ultimately, we're just going to look at this game based on how Houston has been performing, how Cleveland has been performing, and then look for some things here and there that could favor them. So starting with the Texans. The reason why the Texans are favored is because of multiple reasons. One, their total D score, which is their defense's ability to prevent first downs, is significantly better than the Browns' defense. On top of that, their total O score, which is their ability to create first downs on offense, is also better than the Browns. The Texans don't throw as many turnovers, or don't give up as many turnovers overall, compared to the Browns as well. Sack percentage is more so with the Browns. The Browns prevent more sacks than the Texans, but a big key difference is offensive score percentage. The Texans are much better when it comes to creating points on every drive versus the Browns. And ultimately, that's a big deal, because if you have an offense that scores more points than your offense, you're going to... I mean, the reason why you've lost so many games, you just don't score enough points. I mean, there's no other ways around it. I would say the advantage, there is one advantage the Browns have, which is their defense has been better in terms of preventing points compared to the Texans' defense. But you could see the disparity heavily in favor for the Texans because of that score percentage. Like, when you are able to put up points, you're just naturally going to win more football games, even if your defense is not that great. So that's kind of a big thing that just favors the Texans from that kind of aspect. Then, of course, you look at turnover ratio. So the Texans' defense creates more turnovers than the Browns, but they're both pretty much they're both below average when it comes to that. Sack percentage is mostly in favor of the Browns, though the Browns are better at creating sacks compared to the Texans. Interception ratio is more so with the Texans versus the Browns, but neither one of these teams is above average when it comes to creating interceptions. So for the most part, the sacks will definitely be a factor, but everything else, turnovers, stuff like that, both of these teams don't really do that well in terms of creating turnovers. In terms of that department, they don't really do that well. So I don't think that's going to be a major factor in this game unless something crazy happens. But again, we'll see. Then, of course, you look at special teams, punt return yardage, kick return yardage, all in favor of the Texans. The Texans just have better all-around ability to create more yardage with their points. Then, of course, you look at preventing punt return yardage and kick return yardage. The Browns actually are favored in that particular area, and when it comes to preventing kick return yardage, also favors the Browns as well. So you have one team that's good at creating kick return and punt return yardage, and another team that is better at preventing kick return and punt return yardage in terms of the Browns. Then, of course, when you look at field goal percentage, heavily favors the Texans. The Browns have one of the worst field goal percentages in the NFL. Extra point percentage, more so with the Browns compared to the Texans. And punting average, Texans have the advantage, but pretty even between both these teams. But the overall data, just to get this out, again, the overall data favors the Texans because of their offense mostly. And, there's a couple things here and there that they do a little bit better. Field goal percentage especially is also another sort of factor to kind of consider in terms of this particular game. Then we look at the other sort of matchup. So this is completion percentage of the Browns versus the Texans. Now, this is subject to change. Again, whenever you have a new quarterback, there's going to be things that change. But I just want to leave this up here as a reference for you guys to go back and look at to see how things might improve next week. Then, of course, we look at the Texans offense versus the Browns defense when it comes to completion percentage. Pretty much favors the Texans. The Texans should try to get a little bit better in terms of first and second down. And second down especially, I think, is a big area. But overall, the Texans do have advantages here, but they're not exactly amazing when it comes to completion percentage. Then we look at rushing down. So the ability to create first downs with the run. Between the Browns offense and the Texans defense. Texans have advantages on second down and third down situations when it comes to this. But the Browns are very good when it comes to the rushing offense, and the Texans are pretty decent when it comes to the rushing defense. So this is actually going to be a very interesting matchup to see from that perspective. Then, of course, when we look at the Texans versus Browns in terms of rushing offense versus rushing defense, most of the data favors the Browns in this scenario. The Browns are a little bit better when it comes to that. The only area that the Texans actually do well in terms of rushing downs is second down, but that's also pretty evenly matched between the Browns. So I would give this to the Browns. So both these defenses are pretty decent in terms of running D. It is important to mention that the Texans, lost J.J. Watt for the rest of the season because of injury. Pretty sure it was the rest of the season. So that's another sort of thing to kind of worry about or wonder about. But overall, I don't think it's too scary to think that both these teams pretty much rushing D-wise, they should perform well in terms of preventing running. And then, of course, you look at passing down. So this is the Browns passing offense versus the Texans passing defense. Terrible. This is why they're making the switch. So all you really need Kevin Hogan to do is to do better than this, which you would hope he can. But this is kind of how things stack up when it comes to that. Then, of course, you look at the Texans passing offense versus the Browns passing defense, and overwhelmingly favors the Houston Texans. This is the big fact. This is why the Texans are actually doing a lot better now, is because of Deshaun Watson. His ability to create first downs on second down and especially third down have been key factors to give them their resurgence. And their ability to put points on the board as well. So this is definitely a key factor that I think favors the Texans heavily. Then, of course, you look at sack rate for the Browns versus the Texans. Most of the sacks the Texans have had has been in second down situations. But I don't really know who to side with here. And again, a lot of those sacks came from players that are injured. Whitney Merciless as well. Whitney Merciless, had a pectoral tear. So there's lots of guys that are going to be out for this game. So this is another sort of area where I think it's subject to change a bit. So I don't really know who to go with here. I would say most of the data kind of favors the Browns, but that second down area is pretty heavily for the Texans. Then, of course, you look at the Texans offense versus the Browns defense when it comes to sacks, and it actually favors the Browns in this particular area, whether you're talking third down, second down, or even first down situations. Interception ratio for the Browns versus the Texans defense heavily favored. And then when you look at the interception ratio for the Houston Texans versus the Cleveland Browns, pretty evenly matched. So overall, how do I feel about this particular matchup? Well, I think pretty easily the Texans win this particular game. The one unknown, of course, is Kevin Hogan. How Kevin Hogan performs, I think, will be a major factor in terms of whether or not the Browns win any games at all this year, because it's been that bad. You would hope Kevin Hogan comes in and plays relatively well. He's going up against the Texans defense that has lost some guys, so that will give him some help. But I really can't say what will happen. So again, this is going to be the first game. to happen. I still go with the Texans. I still think that Deshaun Watson has been playing very well. I don't think the Browns defense gives him anything unique that he hasn't seen before, other than Myles Garrett. Like, that's the only really, really unique thing that this defense will bring is Myles Garrett, that factor. But I still think the Texans will win. I still think offensive score percentage is heavily in favor of them. But I just hope that Kevin Hogan can come in and do better than what Deshaun Kaiser is doing, and hopefully that's the case, because you always want to see teams get better, and I hope that that's the case with them, as well. But I still think it's Texans victory. So of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at giraffecoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.